How do kids' brains actually learn to read? This is the science of reading for parents of littles, because nobody tells you how your preschooler's brain learns letter sounds. But the good news is, it's a science, not an art, which means anyone can teach their child to read. There's no special secret skill set that you need to have. So if you feel overwhelmed or you don't know where to start, all you need to do is follow the research. And when I followed the research, I found a strategy that worked faster for teaching preschoolers to read, and it's called an embedded pictograph mnemonic. So let's talk through why embedded pictograph mnemonics work so well for teaching preschoolers to read, better than any other strategy I've seen. Most parents I've talked to haven't heard of the science of reading, or if they have, it's been kind of in a marketing gimmick sort of way, like something will be sold as a science of reading product. But that's not what the science of reading is. It's not a singular approach, but a whole body of research that we've gathered over the years for how the brain learns to read. And because it's this body of research, it's not prescribing one way to teach kids to read, but people who have studied the science of reading have come to some conclusions about what is actually evidence-based, what moves the needle when it comes to teaching kids to read, and it's going to surprise you. The big thing the science of reading establishes, though, is that reading is not natural. In the past, the approach to reading has been the idea that it is natural. If you read to your child, if you ask them to read books, they will eventually start reading. And some people believe in wait until it's developmentally appropriate or their kid starts to show some interest or some progress in reading before introducing any reading concepts. But the science of reading would argue that it is not natural for the brain to learn to read. Most kids need explicit instruction in 5 core areas. And by explicit, I mean actively teaching and giving kids the strategies they need to conquer these 5 areas of reading: vocabulary, fluency, comprehension, phonics, and phonological awareness. Overall, it's arguing for a systematic, structured approach to teaching reading. We're not just going to throw things at our kids and hope that it sticks. We're going to strategically teach these 5 components, which honestly is a pendulum swing for the approach to reading that we've seen in the past. Because here's what it's not. Number 1, it's not memorization. In the past, reading researchers have noticed that kids who are fluent readers will read the whole word instead of sounding it out. So they've argued that kids should just memorize whole words instead of learning phonics. The science of reading says no, kids need to be able to read unfamiliar words using their phonics skills, and over time, they will learn to read any word quickly and easily. Number 2, it's not phonics exclusively, which just means phonics isn't everything to teaching how to read. We also need to be really explicit with how we are teaching vocabulary and other areas so that our kids don't just know how to break apart a word and read it, but also that they can understand it. And number 3, it's not guessing. Even with those tricky words, the science of reading has shown us that we can teach kids how to break them down, understand them, not just look at the picture, look at the first letter, and make a guess. And if you're a millennial, that strategy might sound really familiar to you, and it's not a good one. So here's the simplest view of the science of reading. The idea is strong reading comes from being able to read words times understanding. So I like to break those 5 categories of reading into words and understanding. So in order to read words, you need phonics, fluency, and phonemic awareness. Phonics, meaning you're looking at the letters and you know what sounds they're going to make. Phonemic awareness, being able to blend those sounds together. So when you hear g, you know it's mug. And fluency, being able to do that quickly and with expression so that you are reading fluently. So to simplify, for your preschooler, this means teaching phonics, starting with letter sounds, and building their background knowledge by reading to them and exposing them to a really strong vocabulary. So what does the science of reading say about letter sounds specifically? Have you ever heard of the forgetting curve by German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus? Because it is crazy for understanding how your preschooler learns letter sounds. These studies have been repeated over time that show when kids are taught something, they will forget half of it in an hour. Half. And in one day, 75% is gone. At the end of a week, 90% of what you've taught them has been forgotten. So the problem when it comes to letters is we're asking kids to memorize 26 random symbols and tell us the sound that they're associated with. So difficulty with letter sounds is really a memory problem. So to fix it, we need a memory strategy. And the only memory strategy I've ever seen for letters is an embedded pictograph mnemonic. See, most letter flashcards will have a letter with a picture underneath or around it, but that's just asking your child to memorize a letter and a picture. Basically memorizing 26 letters, 26 pictures, not even to mention uppercase and lowercase. That's a lot for preschoolers to remember. But with an embedded pictograph mnemonic, we're building letters on kids' background knowledge. So your child knows that snake starts with S. And when that visual fits into the shape of the letter, now when your child sees an S, they say, oh, the snake letter. S. You make the connection between the letter and the sound easy so that that letter sound really sticks with them. So here's the research on the science of reading. This study is a neat one when it comes to learning letters because English-speaking preschoolers were presented with 10 Hebrew letter sound relations, which means they didn't already have a prior knowledge of like, oh, I know that letter is A, it says ah. And they tried out the strategy of an embedded picture in that Hebrew letter. And then other kids were taught the letter sounds with just a traditional approach where it has a picture, but it's not fitting into the shape of the letter. The embedded letters were mastered in fewer trials, they were less frequently confused with other letters, and they were remembered better 1 week later, which translated to better word reading and spelling. This study looked at first graders, preschoolers, and kindergartners, and it concluded that those taught with integrated mnemonics, or the embedded mnemonic, learn more letter sound associations and also more letter picture associations, so being able to look at the S and say, oh, the snake letter, than the other two groups which did not include the embedded picture. The integrated pictures, it said, were more effective because they linked two otherwise unconnected items in the memory. So you have the way the letter looks and a picture of a snake. Linking those together helps your child to say S. And in this awesome paper put out by the Reading League, Brick by Brick, Insights on Alphabet Instruction from Research, by Demchak and Solari, referenced another 2019 study showing that those taught with embedded mnemonics learned on average twice as many letter sounds as their treated control peers, which really gets you thinking, why do embedded pictograph mnemonics work? And it's based on the idea that letters are symbols. Imagine that you came to school and I said, this is Guy, it says, say, and then I asked you to remember that that always says, and then I showed you 25 other symbols and asked you to memorize those sounds as well. Challenging, no? That's a crazy thing to ask. But what if I put this house into the shape of the letter and said, look, this symbol is now whenever you saw this symbol, you'd remember the house and you'd say, you connect the symbol to what they already know so that your child can learn that sound. So my question was, why isn't everybody teaching their child with this strategy? But when I looked for an embedded pictograph mnemonic on the market, I couldn't really find anything good. I saw some that were just shoving an animal into the shape of the letter, which honestly could be really confusing. So when I created lit letters, I chose a visual that naturally fit into the shape of the letter, and specifically lowercase letters, because I wanted to be able to use these to build CVC words, because that is the basis, the foundation for the rest of phonics. When your child is confidently reading CVC words, that is consonant, vowel, consonant, they are ready to start learning more phonics skills on top of that, and it's just easier from there. That was my goal with the lowercase letters. And I also wanted to create a game-based curriculum using this strategy because your preschooler is still going to need a lot of repetition with actually blending short CVC words, and they're not going to get that by trying to read books. Most books are not made of words like can, mug, had exclusively. In games, your child is seeing those same types of words over and over and over again, blending new ones, and they're doing it through what they love, play. Lit Letters uses games to target the exact skill your child needs, which is these short 3-letter words. And because they're blending all these different CVC words, they're gaining confidence with the foundation of phonics, which is why Lit Letters makes letter sounds and CVC words so easy for preschoolers. So let's make it easy.